In 1962, the fastest production car in America was not a Corvette, not a Ferrari, and not a Thunderbird. It came from a company so close to bankruptcy that their own board had hired a new president specifically to wind the business down. That car was the Studebaker Avanti R3, and only 9 of them ever left the factory. The story of the Avanti R3 does not begin in a design studio or on a racetrack. It begins in 1852, in South Bend, Indiana, in a blacksmith shop owned by 2 brothers named Henry and Clement Studebaker. They started making wagons. Then their brother John Moeller Studebaker came home from the California Gold Rush, where he had been building wheelbarrows for miners, and he bought into the business. The Civil War turned Studebaker into a giant. Their covered wagons carried settlers across the American West. By the late 1800s, Studebaker was the largest vehicle manufacturer in the entire world. They also made a move that almost no wagon maker managed to pull off. They crossed over into automobiles. Their first car was an electric, built in 1902. Thomas Edison was a customer. By 1950, Studebaker was selling nearly 400,000 cars a year, employing between 24,000 and 26,000 people and holding a 4% share of the American car market. Then the Big Three decided to get aggressive on pricing, and Studebaker simply could not keep up. By 1954, production had collapsed to around 80,000 units, and the company was carrying a $26 million deficit. That same year, Packard stepped in and bought Studebaker, believing the merger would create America's 4th largest car company. What Packard did not know was how bad the numbers actually were. Studebaker had told them their break-even point was 165,000 units per year. The real number was 282,000. When Packard's chief financial officer finally saw the real books, he reportedly came back looking ashen-faced. From 1953 to 1963, Studebaker turned a profit exactly once, in 1959, through a compact car called the Lark. The automotive division lost between $37 and $40 million between 1960 and 1963, and their market share fell below 2%. By 1963, many of their 1,800 dealers were selling fewer than 20 cars per year. The board needed a solution, and the solution they chose was a man named Sherwood Egbert. Born on July 24, 1920, Egbert had studied engineering, served as a major in the United States Marine Corps, and held a full pilot's rating. He had risen to executive vice president at McCulloch Corporation, a maker of chainsaws and superchargers, where he had grown the operation into a $70 million business. Tea Time magazine gave him the nickname Mr. Go-Go-Go. On February 1, 1961, at 41 years old and standing 6 feet 4 inches tall, Egbert walked into Studebaker as its new president. He had 0 experience in the automotive industry. His response to that fact was simple. Coming from the outside has its advantages. Here is the thing the board never counted on. They had hired Egbert to quietly absorb Studebaker's $94 million in tax loss credits by merging with profitable companies. They expected him to let the car business die. Instead, he personally visited 1,300 dealerships and became genuinely obsessed with saving the company through the cars themselves. His total budget for restyling the entire Lark and Hawk lineup was $7 million. The designer Brooks Stevens later said that $7 million was about enough to tool a Plymouth door handle. But Sherwood wasn't an automobile man. He didn't know it was impossible. The idea for the Avanti came to Egbert on an airplane. He had stopped at O'Hare Airport in Chicago and bought every automotive magazine he could find. On a brochure for a sports car, he scrawled a note: "Do something like this." His plan was a halo car, a dramatic, headline-grabbing GT that would pull people into Studebaker showrooms. To make it happen, he called Raymond Loewy. Loewy was born in Paris in 1893, and he became the most influential industrial designer of the 20th century. His portfolio included the Lucky Strike cigarette packaging, the Greyhound bus, the Shell logo, the interior of NASA's Skylab, and the livery of Air Force One for President Kennedy. He appeared on the cover of Time magazine on October 31, 1949. He had already designed Studebaker's legendary 1953 Starliner coupe, and Egbert trusted him completely. The project was designated internally as XH, Egbert's own initials. On March 19, 1961, Loewy assembled a team of 3 designers at a rented tract house on Via Escuela in Palm Springs, California. The 3 men were John Epstein, Bob Andrews, and Tom Kellogg, who was just 27 years old at the time. When Loewy called Kellogg to recruit him, Kellogg hung up the phone, convinced it was a hoax. Loewy kept the assignment secret. The designers did not even know what they would be building, and Loewy forbade them from calling their wives. They worked 12-hour days. In approximately 8 days, they had a 1:8 scale clay model complete. The entire design was finished in roughly 40 days. Egbert looked at the final result, approved it in about 20 minutes, toasted with soda pop, and said, "Let's go." He named the car Avanti, Italian for forward. Loewy described it in 3 words: "It looks power." The design was unlike anything American roads had seen. There was no front grille. Cooling air came through a hidden scoop below the bumper, a solution that almost every modern car now uses. The hood scoop was offset to the driver's side, asymmetrical by design. Loewy said it made the car and driver integral, like the sight of a gun. The Avanti had aircraft-inspired overhead console controls, a built-in roll bar as standard equipment, and a padded dashboard that would not be federally mandated for more than 5 years. Most remarkably, it became the first American production car to come with standard front disc brakes, using a Bendix and Dunlop system. The Corvette did not get front disc brakes until 1965. The body was fiberglass, chosen purely for speed to market, and chrome was kept to an absolute minimum, a radical choice in early 1960s America. Underneath all of that, Studebaker offered 4 engine options, called the R series. The R1 was a naturally aspirated 289 cubic inch engine making 240 horsepower, and 2,810 of those were built. The R2 was a supercharged version of the same 289 cubic inch engine making 289 horsepower, and 1,833 were built. Then came the R3. It displaced 304.5 cubic inches, carried a supercharger, and was rated at 335 horsepower, though actual output was likely above 400 horsepower. Every single R3 engine was hand-built by a team working under Andy Granatelli at Paxton Products. Road and Track tested an R3 and recorded 0 to 60 miles per hour in 5.5 seconds. In 1963, that number was nothing short of extraordinary. At the extreme end sat the experimental R5, nicknamed the Duecento, which ran twin superchargers and produced 575 horsepower. Only one was ever built, and it reached 196.62 miles per hour, 316.46 kilometers per hour at Bonneville. Only 9 R3s were ever completed. Granatelli himself was a character straight out of a novel. He quit school at 14 and eventually grew the STP oil treatment brand from a $1.8 million business into a $105 million one, and he was later inducted into the Automotive Hall of Fame. In August through October 1962, he brought 12 Studebakers to the Bonneville Salt Flats in Utah for 10 days of record attempts. The primary record car was a gold Avanti, number 9, certified as completely stock and running on pump gasoline. It covered 1 mile at 168.15 miles per hour, 270.57 kilometers per hour, and on the return leg of the 20-mile run, it hit 178.5 miles per hour, 287.24 kilometers per hour. Those speeds blew through the previous records by more than 50 miles per hour. Driver Paula Murphy hit 161.29 miles per hour, 259.5 kilometers per hour, and became known as the world's fastest woman on wheels. Granatelli took passengers along at 172 miles per hour, and at one point removed his hands from the wheel for several thousand feet. Across all 12 Studebakers combined, 337 different USAC records fell. Not a single mechanical failure was recorded. The cars burned only half a pint of oil across the entire campaign. The Avanti had broken 29 national speed records at Bonneville. It had disc brakes no one else was using. It had been designed in 40 days by the most famous industrial designer alive. It was the fastest production car in America. And it was about to be strangled by a fiberglass problem. Studebaker outsourced body production to the Molded Fiberglass Body Company, which had no experience assembling complete car bodies. The problems were severe. Panels fit poorly. Rear windows fell through on some cars and blew out on others while driving on the road. Egbert had planned to build 20,000 Avantis in 1962 alone. The actual numbers were 24 in June, 12 in July, and 118 in August. Frustrated buyers started canceling orders, and many dealerships could not even get a single display model to put on the floor. Total production of all Avantis across the entire run reached only 4,643 cars. In late 1962, Egbert was diagnosed with stomach cancer. He kept working. He kept fighting. On November 24, 1963, 2 days after the assassination of President John F. Kennedy, Egbert resigned. On December 20, 1963, the last Avanti rolled off the line in South Bend, 5 days before Christmas. 7,000 workers lost their jobs. The board chairman described the loyal workforce as people who had bled us white. Sherwood Egbert, the man who had given everything to save a company that did not want to be saved, died on July 30, 1969, at only 49 years old. Nate Altman and Leo Newman purchased the Avanti name in 1964 and began producing the Avanti II in 1965 using Chevrolet engines. Remarkably, Loewy's original body shape survived in production all the way through 1981. The car found famous admirers. Dick Van Dyke, Sandy Koufax, Ricky Nelson, and Raymond Loewy himself all owned one. If you want an R3 today, good luck. One sold at RM Sotheby's in 2019 for $104,500. Classic.com currently shows 0 R3 Avantis for sale anywhere in the world. 9 were built. 9. That is fewer than the number of fingers on your hands. It was the fastest production car in America, built by a dying company, designed in a rented house in Palm Springs in under 6 weeks, powered by hand-built engines that likely made well over 400 horsepower, and driven to 29 national speed records at Bonneville. Then the factory closed 5 days before Christmas, and history moved on. If you want to see more stories like this one, cars that history buried but absolutely should not have, make sure you are subscribed. There are more forgotten giants where this one came from.